Hello and welcome. This is our C-suite entrepreneurial panel, and we have these lovely individuals here who will be sharing some of their experiences and career journey and advice with all of us this evening. My name is Carrie Hewitt. I am currently the interim dean for our School of Graduate Studies, and I'm going to pass it over to the panel as well as our moderator and let everybody else introduce themselves. Thank you again for being here tonight.
Excellent. Thank you, Carrie. All right, so I'll kick it off. Welcome, everyone. My name is Tim Engstrom. I am a graduate of the supply chain program here, 2003. I am also head of supply chain, so a chief supply chain officer for Ascendant Corporation up in Deerfield, and I've been an adjunct in the supply chain program here since 2005. So I'll kick it over to Quincy.
Cool. Good evening. My name is Quincy Banks. I am also an alum of, I say, the greatest college in the world. And when people say, no, it's not, I say, well, you know, that's why they made other colleges, because everybody couldn't go to Elmhurst. I am a 2000, class of 2000 graduate. Currently, I am founder and president of Graphics by Design, which is a company that I started while I was here as a student.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Claren, and I also am an alum. I did my undergrad here and graduated in 2004 and got my business management degree with a concentration in, or I think it was called a concentration in HR at the time. And I am the chief HR officer for a company called Premistar, which is a mechanical contractor building automation organization, and lead our HR team across the U.S. And I've been in the field of HR for over 20 years.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Herb Washington. I am an alum as well, graduate of 97, and I'm going to make a quick correction to something Mr. Banks said. Elmhurst University. It took me some time to get used to it, too. Yeah. I am currently the CEO of an organization called the Center for Enriched Living. It's a nonprofit organization located in Lake County in Riverwoods, Illinois. Our focus is on providing life-changing programs and services for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And that sector has been the focus of my career since the day I left Elmhurst as an undergraduate.
Good evening, everyone. Leslie Banks, and I am an alum of the class of 2000, actually 2001. I graduated in February, so that's why we just had this conversation. I get it mixed up. So anyway, majored in communication studies and have been in the field of human resources since I was here at Elmhurst, holding a full-time job. And I am presently at Chewy, which is a pet supplies company. So if you have any domestic pets in the room and you order online and get those lovely little boxes delivered to your front step, that's who I work for. And I am head of diversity, equity, and inclusion at Chewy.
Well, we went in the right order because I'm Mike Bell and I did not go to Elmhurst.
That's why you're on the end.
I'm the last guy here. I am currently the CMO for a company called Everspring that does a lot of different services, including marketing services for universities. And I've been in marketing in various different functions and industries for about 20 years now. I feel like I'm about to take a certificate or something.
Welcome to the family.
Thank you.
So I have a couple questions, general questions that will be open for the panel, and then I have some specific questions for specific folks to be more targeted. So the first question I have for all of us is, how have you used networking to navigate your career? And, you know, what tips do you have for effective networking? So start off with Quincy here.
Okay. Networking for me has been our lifeline. I'll share with you a quick story on how networking helped to elevate us to where we are. Our first big client was on accident. Well, it wasn't on accident. We didn't know who they were. My business partner, she was out at a lunch and having conversation, and this woman approached her. It was like, you guys did this event for this pastor. It was great. We should have lunch. And at that time, she was like, okay, we're going to have lunch. Long story short, come to find out that this lady was Donda West, Kanye West's mother.
Whoa.
And she was like, I want you guys, my son is doing, he's doing a foundation. I want you guys to do his big event downtown. We did that event. The event went off great. She loved it. That grew into another networking opportunity of some people who were there, who were talking to us. And this other young lady approached us and said, hey, we're doing the foundation too, and I want to meet with you guys. My brother plays in the NBA. Met with her. Her name was Tregeal Wade, Dwayne Wade's sister. So just the networking and the people seeing good work that you do, and just being genuine with people, and just treating people like people. So that's my networking story of how we got into upper event plannings.
Wow. Well, I mean, that's hard to follow.
It really is.
Don't have any superstar connections or super athletes, but I think networking, I will go back to my experiences at Elmhurst. I did shadowing experiences when I was here, and I had a mentor, and through those shadowing experiences started to build my HR network, and I'm still connected to the HR person that I job shadowed with. And so as I've been in different transitions or different roles within my career, been able to connect back to that individual. And my mentor, if many of you have talked to me about my mentor, he was actually a trustee here at Elmhurst, and he was life-changing for me to get to know and to build different HR connections for me and challenge and grow my mindset around the concept of HR. So I would say networking opens connections, as you said, and creates opportunities to explore and challenge yourself in ways that are outside of how you might normally be connected in whether that's your familial or your organizational structures. And I think I've used it to navigate my career, to be a great sounding board, to challenge me in ways that I might not traditionally think. So it's been very impactful to my journey, and I wouldn't be where I'm at without those experiences.
I think, networking, especially in the sector that I operate and function, it's typically an understated or undervalued area of focus. But networking has been extremely important to me personally, professionally, and also for the organizations that I've been affiliated with. As has already been stated, I think the importance of networking is to expand opportunities. There's mutual benefit to be had from people that you meet or companies that you interface with, also allowing me to stretch my own thinking of what's possible. I think the diversity of thought and experiences that come from interacting with people across different sectors, different industries, is absolutely invaluable. And I think if we stay in a homogeneous kind of bubble within our own sector and industry, we're really limiting ourselves. One quick story, it's funny now, wasn't funny at the time because it happened multiple times. There was a point in my career where I went to these large, 400 or 500 person LinkedIn Chicago networking events, and I did the whole circuit. And some of them, you'd walk in, you'd register, and you'd have colored dot stickers depending on your industry. And and I remember one time I went and for nonprofits, it was a pink circle sticker, popped it on my chest, and walked around proudly like, oh my God, this is going to be great. I'm going to talk to so many people. And I was the only person with that pink dot. And so as I walked through, it was very interesting to see the crowd just part around me, because no one there saw the value in talking to someone who worked for a nonprofit organization in terms of developing B2B relationships. And I think through conversations I had that night, I hope that I was able to open some eyes and change perspectives of what is possible when we all just open our minds and have conversations and try to learn from each other over time.
And I plus one to what everyone has spoken about in terms of the value that it's brought. I think of the times when people would say networking, and it would just make me a little nervous and possibly ill mainly because I'm an introvert. And so walking into a big space where people I don't know, I have to like get in the room, get a sense of what's happening, not necessarily who's there, but more so just getting a true sense of what's happening in the room, how people are engaging, how people are moving. So I have to stand back and do this observation first. I see heads nodding in the audience like, yep. And so I wouldn't be intentional like I'm here to network, but I'm here to gain something, a new relationship, new information, new insight, a new publication, something. And so that helped for me to relax my nerves a lot more. And so now it is natural to come into an environment, not necessarily to network, but to just think about all the different people that I get to meet and all the different experiences that people talk about and share. And now I find that I'm eagerly interested in getting to know people at a more personal level. So I don't even call it networking anymore. It just feels like now I'm showing up in the room to be able to contribute and then expecting that I'll get something back from that contribution of that conversation.
Again, I feel like I'll plus one everybody's
wanna
saying.
switch seats?
No, yeah. I feel like I'm at the end here, what those guys said. But I think it is incredibly valuable. I do think it's sort of undervalued. I am the exact same way. I kind of had a lot of trepidation going into networking. But I guess what I would add to what everybody else said is the fact that you're in a network, whether you recognize it or not. And I think that's probably what made me kind of embrace it a little bit, is that at the end of the day, as human beings, we all kind of operate off of, we need a certain amount of trust to do a thing, right? And I think that is the currency of networking, right? If you make a connection and you know someone who does something that's incredibly valuable in an area you cannot do, and you bring in this sort of diversity of opinions, perspective, but also capabilities, and you bring that back to them too. I think I've been really lucky that over the course of the years of my career, I've been able to cultivate a really good network that if I have a thing I got to figure out, there's a person I can go to. And certainly I've had situations where they've come to me on that. So I think that's kind of how I've looked at networking as being something effective and something that you should embrace and be intentional about.
That's great. So as you can hear all the different panelists talk about networking, you have to work at it. It's not something that just naturally happens and it just comes to you. It's not something you can be passive about. You have to actively work at it. And these are all great examples of how each one of us look at networking and approach it. Because we all have different personalities, introverted, extroverted, but networking is something that you have to work at and consistently work at it. So on that theme, and Mike, I'm going to start with you this time.
I appreciate that.
It's no plus ones. On this one, so think about it as you grow your career and if you've worked through different components, how do you collaborate and develop partnerships to accomplish your goals?
It's a good question. I think, so how do you collaborate and develop partnerships to accomplish your goals, right? I think one of the things that took me a while to identify in my career is I feel like, and I'm sure people feel differently about this, I feel like if there's an area where you're really strong at it, you should develop that, you should cultivate that. If there's an area where you're maybe not as strong at it, you're only going to get so good. That's my personal opinion on that. That's the areas or opportunities, I think, in terms of collaboration. So, I'm in marketing, for example. There are some people who are really good at the numbers, or quant marketers. They're very digital. There are people who are very creative. There are people who are great at sort of coming up with that perfect messaging. Those are perfect examples of two personalities that are almost mutually exclusive. You'll find some unicorns that could do both. But there's a great example of you put somebody together who's a real creative person with somebody who's a very quantitative person, you can come up with an exceptional campaign. And I think understanding those areas where you're strongest and where you're weakest and finding synergies with people who might be the opposite or different or complementary to you is probably the way I would approach that.
Oh, I was like,
Get a plus one.
Okay.
Maya.
All right. Well, the work that I do on a day-to-day basis requires a lot of people. And so I walk into each day understanding that it's not my ideas that will always win the approval or win the attention of everyone. And so the way in which I do that in a more practical sense is providing information that, one, I'm listening, so I understand the needs of the clients that I'm serving, whether it be our individual contributors, from team members, from leaders, from the executives, whomever, is really understanding the needs and not only what they're asking for, but what they're not asking for. So sometimes you have to be able to read in between what someone has verbally said to you, but also to understand what they haven't said to you, and then seek that information to then support what it is that you're trying to create. And so to your point of looking for people with different skill sets, different abilities, different knowledge, different interests, to say, hey, this is not something that I'm an expert at, but I think that you have the talent, the skills, et cetera, and I believe that your department, your function, your individual contribution would be certainly helpful on this project. And it's expected in the work that I do that it is not just Leslie and her team who's running a particular program. We have to then explain all the different collaborations and the partnerships across the organization. And then when that doesn't happen, then you're having more conversations like, oh, why didn't you bring me in the room? I wanted to be there early. I wanted to be there at the time of inception, as opposed to just being able to execute. So I've learned the hard way that obviously do it on the front end, but also expect that people can come into those conversations and collaborate, and that's the expectation that we have for everyone.
I would say ditto, but I'm not going to. I'm going to add some going to add on as well. I think, when we talk about partnership development or collaboration, I think one of the starting points, I suppose, is really knowing what are your goals, right? And being able to state your objectives clearly and concisely, but also in a way that whomever your audience is will understand. I think the other key component, bringing it down from macro B2B to micro level, person to person, is knowing what are my core competencies, but also being keenly self-aware of what tools are not in my toolbox, what tools I don't have the time or capacity to add to my toolbox, and where I can get those capabilities from other people, and being open to that idea. I think one of the things I like to do with my teams, and I have throughout my career, is to take some of these kind of incredibly complex ideas. Partnership development may be one of them. There's a lot of different variables and components, but just whittle it down to the simplest terms that I can. And so I look at whether we're talking about macro business to business or micro, me working with somebody on my team or working with someone else from another business, it all comes down to personal relationships. And when you think about personal relationships, I think Mike hit on this, trust is at the forefront. So there has to be trust as a foundation. And in order for me to be vulnerable, to say, hey, I don't have these tools in my toolbox, and here's a need that I have, and I know you can help me with this. And for that other person or entity or whomever it is to also feel comfortable doing the same, saying, hey, there's mutual benefit here because here's what I'm missing. And I think once you have that foundation of trust, it really opens up the doorway to be creative, to produce things that you couldn't produce on your own. And we all have, everyone on this panel has, and probably has on our teams, people who are entrenched in subject matter expertise. And the world that I live in, I can't live in that one box. I have to spread myself around, which means I cannot be an expert in all these areas. So I need people. We all need people to accomplish the goals that we set out to accomplish, and we can't do it on an island, can't do it by yourself.
I'll build on that a little bit. So talking about tools in your toolboxes. So I, as a HR leader across an organization, exist to try and extract the potential of that organization. And for me personally, my why to why I'm in HR is to help everyone really be able to live what they believe their potential is, and even then some, and to achieve that within our organization. So to do that, you really have to collaborate and partner within an organization. There's lots of stigmas about the world of HR out there, being the policy police, and, HR has transformed in the way that it helps to organize and collaborate around human capital across, all different functions. I think an example to our business of where collaboration and partnership was really important was I work for a highly acquisitive organization. They had just done 20 acquisitions of companies. I came in, was brand new to the organization as the HR leader, and the organization said, well, what are our values now that we're this organization of 20 plus family of companies? And so rather than getting an executive leadership team together and espousing what we wanted the values of the company to be, we brought these 20 different organizations together and had them engage in a process where they, before they even came to the conversation, went through a values exercise to clarify what their values were that were non-negotiable, and had them come together and share and tell stories of lived values within their organizations, and worked across those 20 different leaders to articulate what was important and critical, identify themes of those core values, and those values then created our Premistar values. And we could not have done that if we didn't take a collaborative and partnered way, and that has been critical to the culture and the foundation build of our company. And so it's a very valuable skill set when you're looking at humans, change management, and culture building.
Yeah, and I'll just wrap everything up, put a nice little bow on it. Partnership is very important. As all the panelists said, you can't do everything by yourself. If you do, you're gonna wear yourself out, and you're not gonna be as effective. In my case, my business partner, she does all of the event planning. And then we work together. I come in and do all the visuals. So I get her vision for what this event is, and then I go and make her vision come true, come to life with supplying all the creatives. And then even as we're working with companies and people, we don't call them our clients, we call them our partners. Because at the end of the day, we're all working together. You know, we're going to give you the dream, but we need to know if this is your dream or if this is a nightmare. And we don't want it to be a nightmare. We want it to be your dream. We want your dream to come true. But if we're not partnering and working together, it's not going to work. And being a graphic designer, one thing, and you probably know this one thing, are those revisions.
Oh, yeah.
You get into another funny story. We were working on the OFFest, which is Common's his festival, and believe it or not, we went through 25 revisions. Wow! And just to be funny, she was like, "Let's just do one more so we can make it an even 25." But we went through that, but without that partnership, we wouldn't have gotten it right to where they wanted it to be. So,
Excellent. So if you think about all of the commentary from the panelists, it's like a kaleidoscope. So think about a multiple different colors forming a picture of background, experience, and knowledge to help build that partnership and build something special. Because we're not all experts in everything, but as a team, collectively, you can be an expert. So great feedback. So this one, I'm gonna mix it up a little bit. I'm gonna start with Herb in the middle, and then go that way to Mike, and then we'll come back to Quincy and Sarah. All right. So this question is, can you please share a challenge that you are facing in your current job?
One? Just
One.
How long is this?
Right.
Wow.
All right. Well, that's a great question. So I think I'm gonna do more than one, but I'm gonna box it nicely. So I think working in human services, one of the largest challenges and also one of the greatest opportunities is the ability to work with people, right? So we provide services and programs to people that are life-changing, but at the same time, people are people. And so people inherently come with varied challenges. And so I think part of our challenge, and one of the biggest challenges across my career, is just being able to know what is our value proposition and being able to clearly articulate that, and knowing what are the boundaries of that value proposition, and not allowing ourselves to drift too far from that. Because then at that point, I like to use the example of the mouse who's accustomed to cheese, and there's cheese readily available, and all of a sudden over here, oh, there's something new. It's peanut butter. It's in a trap, of course. But I'm going to go over there and try this peanut butter because it's something new. Well, sometimes going and try this new thing that seems like a good idea at the time not only comes back to bite you or snap in this form of a trap, but also it eliminates the ability to go back and to go back to where you were at, to go back to what your focus was, or to do your original focus well. And so being extremely focused on what your mission of your business is, or your customer base, or your stakeholders or shareholders. I think that's key. We're all going to innovate. We're all going to have some creep that occurs, but I also think having boundaries established so that you're not diversifying your business for the sake of diversification and at the cost of your core objectives.
I would say, so the question is the challenge. Current challenge. There are two. And it's less about the day-to-day work. It's more about the environment in which this work exists. So diversity, equity, inclusion is on all the news channels. It is a curse word in some organizations and a very cheerful word in other organizations. And everybody has a different definition of it. So I would say the challenges at this point in time, and even in my 25 plus years of HR career, is like, I thought this was supposed to get easier as I'm now trailing down as opposed to trailing up, is the external forces and all the information that's out there that gives people the impression that there is something wrong with this work, that it's not of value, it's not of meaning, it doesn't do the thing that you need it to do. And so that is constantly a challenge because you're being, bombarded with all that information from a variety of different angles. I would say the second challenge is just in work in general and creating culture where there's a reason to believe. And so that connects directly back to the work that we do in DE&I, but even more so how employees show up on a day-to-day basis, whether they're remote, whether they're virtual, remote, virtual, or whether they come into the office or whether they're hybrid, whatever the case may be. It's still creating an environment in which there's a reason to believe why my contributions matter, that my voice matters, that the work that I do on a day-to-day basis matters. So I would say those are the biggest two challenges, which are, in some ways esoterical, like, okay, there's not one program that you can, implement to solve those things, but it is constantly on our minds and a consciousness that I never thought that we'd be sitting in this space right now.
Yep. Mike?
So we have lots of problems, challenges, I should say. Opportunities, thank you. But the one big hairy one that keeps me up at night is, it's an external force in that, one that we've all kind of lived through is COVID. COVID, I guess you can say driven or induced, and it's the idea of remote type of stuff. So bit of context, bit of background is we primarily help universities put their programs online and then help them market it, build the web properties, all the infrastructure, get students enrolled, and then make sure they successfully graduate. So we do all of that work, and it's a bit of a success tax in that with the help of COVID, we entered a market where a lot of universities are incredibly resistant to going online and even more resistant to doing online marketing. We started to move the needle a little bit, and then COVID helped us push it over the end, where the pendulum has now swung so far in the other direction, where we've gone from, I think we say internally in our organization, they went from resistant to reluctant to hesitant to now accepting and now demanding what we do. And so we have an incredible amount of demand in a different format where they want to own it. They want to oversee it. They want to be a part of it. And it's something that, it's a really fun and fascinating challenge to be a part of, in that I've seen more disruption and more growth and more absorption of the subject matter in this industry in the last 2 years than any startup I've ever been in my entire career. But now I have to think about the team that got me to this level of success. I have to completely dismantle and retool. And it touches on all the stuff we talked about. There's certainly capabilities and skill sets that are far outside of my wheelhouse, and I need to bring other people in on it. I need to think thoughtfully about how do I do it in a way where it protects the team that got me here. I have to think about it in a way where we scale in a way that allows our company to continue to grow profitably and at the same time deliver the results we're known for. So it's a lot of things, and we don't have the time to cover all of that, but that's really what I'm wrestling with now.
Sarah?
Yeah, so I When I think about one of our largest challenges, it's talent related. So we are in a trades-based organization. So we're hiring technicians to go on site to colleges, universities, hospitals, and work on large-scale boilers and chillers that provide either comfort heating, cooling, and they're complicated systems. Like the technicians I've been out in vans with and gone on site, I mean, they're diagnosing like a doctor diagnoses what is wrong with a patient. And so we're having to reshape all the way down into middle schools and elementary schools, trying to attract talent into the trades and into our specific industry, and then to shape our employment value proposition as an employer around what is going to attract someone to want to come and work for us. So please come work for us, because we are going to make a difference in a hospital, and we control the humidity to ensure that hospitals are able to actually safely conduct surgery at the right temperature that doesn't cause bacteria and infection. This is something our industry has never had to do in selling that mission focus, but to attract a middle school student today to want to get into the trades and help them understand that they can, make a very, very decent living in the trades today. It's not, what their grandfather was doing, and the value proposition is completely shape shifted. So we're having to shape the industry, shape the value proposition to attract talent to be able to deliver on what our customer needs are that are outpacing our ability to deliver. And so, in any trades, also the effects of retirement readiness it's shocking to look at 5 years from now how much of our organization will continue to make that transition on to their next phase of their journey. And so really taking all of the organizational readiness, the industry readiness, and solution that for an organization is one of our largest challenges, and we have to solve it in two different directions, because part of our organization is union-based, part of it's non-union-based, and so that talent development factory looks different under both of those models. So it's a fun challenge, we love it, but it is very real, and I think many organizations struggle with that talent equation, in an element of how you shared too. The skills are ever changing.
And my biggest challenge is the two dreaded words. Mark and I were talking about this. Is AI.
Oh yes, that's a good one.
Oh, holy guacamole!
Yeah.
Let me tell you about this. And I love technology, but you have in my field of visual communication, you have these AI software that you can just really type in what you're looking for, and it'll create it for you. But this is where I come in. I often tell people, you don't pay me for what I do, you pay me for what I know. Yes, you can go and put into an AI and Photoshop or whatever, this is what I want, you put it in there, but do you really know how that's going to market well? Do you really know color theory? Do you really know what shapes go with each other? You know what fonts complement the message that you're trying to get through? Or do you just want to put this out there, throw it out there, and see if it sticks to the wall? A lot of people will say, yes, I'll take that because it's cheaper. Cheaper isn't always best all the time. It's a quick solve, but it's not always the perfect solution. So AI is going to get better throughout the years. And Mark and I were talking. I've seen some people who call themselves designers who have used AI or the dreaded software Canva to create something, and then I get a hold to it, and then I start throwing these terms at them like, okay, where are the source files? Where are the fonts? Oh, well, we don't have that. They just gave it to us as this flat document. Did they create this on Canva? Yes. Okay, so we're going to have to redo all of this. So now that cheap job that you had is now going to turn into an expensive job. So once again, it's only going to get better. It's good for the industry because I even use it sometimes. It cuts down on the time because in my industry, time is money. So I can probably use it in a way to knock something out quicker. but I still have that knowledge base that I can go in and correct it, to pull things apart, to make it not get to 25 revisions. So once again, people pay me for what I know, not for what I do.
Well, we could stop there because that's right my next question.
Thank you. Good night.
Way to go, Quincy. Yeah, so that actually is my next question. I'll start with Leslie this time and kind of go with Mike and then come back this way. So how are you or your company approaching innovation and artificial intelligence? You know, Quincy kind of kicked it off for us, so.
And I didn't look on your
I know. See? Leading edge.
Yeah, so in the pet supplies industry, where we are serving pet parents and pet partners everywhere, I would say the technology component is huge, particularly in getting packages out the door and finding efficiencies in our supply chain.
I'm feeling the love over here.
Finding efficiencies in the supply chain process, being able to deliver to 80% of our customers within 24 hours. And then looking at fulfillment centers as a primary focus of the business. We have generation 1, generation 2, and that's really the machinery that is within those buildings, and how fast can those orders be processed, how accurate can those orders be processed. I would say from an AI perspective, that's likely to be in our tech side of the business, as well as in our fulfillment centers, but even in customer service. So if you ever have read about Chewy, we have artists who paint portraits of your pets, and those are sent out randomly. Now, these are real people who are sitting and using their hands to paint. But as Quincy mentioned, there's other, I won't say shortcuts, but there's other ways to use artificial intelligence to insert, different designs, or having that, pre-designed, but then being able to follow through with the artistry of it. So we're testing it out. We're not going all in. We're going to, I would say slow walk this, because the business is still heavily related on the relationships. Like, people love their pets. Pets are like children to some people. And so it's important that not only we deliver a product that is a high quality product, we deliver it as expected, but then if something happens, or if someone has a question, that we provide the level of customer service, and that is part of the overall, like, how do we continue to refine the technologies that support those things that are important to the business, as opposed to technology taking over and eliminating jobs or eliminating people from the process. Like, people is core to our business.
Like,
So I think there's two things. There's how do you embrace innovation, and then there's how do you embrace an AI, because I think they're very different things. I mean, they're the same thing, but AI, let's be real, is an absolute game changer. And I think the horse is out of the barn on that. It's not going backwards. It's going to continue to be more and more of what we do. But to your point, I think there's a core human element of it you'll never be able to automate, let's say. So I spent a number of years in my early career in the military. This is what we would call in the military a force multiplier. It is not something that is replacing a person. It is making one person have the ability to do the job of 4 or 5 people. And actually, interestingly enough, this is where, but my big hairy problem is where I'm deploying AI the most, in order to have more scale from the existing team I have. And we've been testing our way. So in terms of how we're looking to use it, we're doing it with a bit of belt and suspenders. So one of the things we'll do that everyone does in marketing is we'll put a brief together. We've developed internally an AI brief generator, and we do not let it run amok on its own. We have a brand manager and we have a AI brief, and we look at them side by side and we compare them and say, is this hitting the mark? Now, there may be one day, a year from now, 6 months from now, 5 years from now, where we're saying this thing is doing it spot on and we don't need to watch it anymore. We'll just give it the prompts and let it build the brief. But we're not doing that now. We have a number of creative designers and copywriters on the team. We are using AI in generating. So one of the things we do is a lot of organic traffic, a lot of SEO, which requires a lot of content, which takes a lot of time. Our copywriters are using AI to produce more content, and then they are copy editing that content. So we're still having that human element, final touch on it. So I'd say it's an extension of the human element. It's not a replacement of it, kind of back to your point. That's how we're using it.
Excellent. Herb?
Yeah, I think in the nonprofit space that I operate, typically you don't think of innovation, and you may not cleanly or neatly find a place for AI. However, both are valuable and both are important. So in human services, we're always looking to come up with better ways to deliver the services or programs to people, either looking at efficiencies, so how do we do it more efficiently, or how do we look at improving the quality? And both of those are necessary in order to scale, because impact is important. And so one of the things that historically has been a challenge in the nonprofit space is, where do you invest your dollars as an organization? So most of the dollars that come in the door are invested or reinvested directly in mission direct services and programs, and your personnel expenses are typically your largest expense. And then so there's very little left over then for technology or for any kind of R&D or drive towards innovation. And so I've always pushed the idea of just because we're human services doesn't mean we shouldn't be innovating. It doesn't mean we always shouldn't be forward thinking. And so our approach is always typically one utilizing the minimum viable product approach, right? So we'll start with something that's simple. We'll run a pilot, and then from there we'll iterate on that concept, on that idea, with a continuous feedback loop, so we can eventually scale it, or we'll pivot. We'll spiral out of that loop and pivot to a new idea or a fresh concept. AI is interesting in the sense that in the work that I do, it doesn't replace a person, because we're actually working a person to person. So at this point, it's not replacing a person. What it does do, however, it does become this additive effect where we can look at AI to improve efficiencies with some of our back office functions, some of our focus on quality enhancement, writing reports, pulling data, and analyzing data. There's still a person at the end of that chain and at the beginning of that chain, but AI is definitely a game changer in terms of improving our efficiency. And I think the one thing we all will probably agree on is the one external variable that's also one of the biggest challenges for all of us is time. We all have only 24 hours in a day. And when none of us, no matter what we do up here or in our lives, are buying more time, because you're not going to get any more. So 24 hours is what you've got to operate in a day. And so how can we be more efficient within the time that we have to drive the same level of impact and quality to our customers?
Sarah?
Yeah, so I told you about our talent challenge. So we're obviously trying to do everything we can to increase the pipeline. So we do use AI from a recruiting perspective to make sure that our recruiters are efficient as possible. And so LinkedIn has a whole AI component, and some of our other human capital management system has some AI integration to it. So we're using that to drive efficiency in attracting talent and finding talent into the organization. But the other side of that is, how do we, if we can't find more people, how do we make our existing technicians more effective and productive within their job by giving them better tools to do their job? And so we've partnered with different software companies that increase that technician's efficiency and increase their knowledge base. So if a technician comes across a problem and they're troubleshooting it and they don't have the exact solution, there are AI solutions and technology solutions that allow them to leverage a larger knowledge set that isn't in front of them or that they have specifically. And so that's how we're leveraging that component. But I think the whole innovation side of the equation is the real enabler of artificial intelligence. And if we can identify and get ahead of where the market is on where and how to apply AI to increase our competitive advantage, that's a lot of what we're talking about. And our private equity firm that's invested in us is really exploring the AI quotient in our specific market space. So that it's been eye-opening to me on all of the potential that's out there that we can't even dream of, but how can you apply that to a specific business?
Excellent. Quincy, you want to add any more since you started this? Or you're good?
No.
Okay. All right, so we got about 15 minutes left. So I'm gonna break this up a little bit and ask a couple questions based on your experiences. So this is a question for Leslie and Sarah. So can you share with us, based on your experience, and we talked a lot about talent and external factors and now AI, how do you create an inclusive work environment, especially with all the external factors happening, from a labor, you got hybrid, remote, so the world has changed drastically. So in that component, how would you, and how do you create an inclusive work environment?
I feel like the DEI expert should go first. No pressure, Leslie.
Right. I'm like, you probably should ask some other people, like, is that actually happening? Is she doing what she said she was supposed to do? I think the first thing is, going back to when we were talking about collaboration and partnerships, is understanding the needs of the business, understanding what your partners want, understanding what is happening within the organization, the sentiments of your employees will help to inform what those, I would say, projects, programs, initiatives will look like. Some of the things that we have come, from out of the pandemic, in a very, what I would say, primarily remote environment, and now it's more hybrid, and then some people are based in hubs, is doing similar things but differently. So if from a programming perspective, all the programming at one point in time would happen within the said space of the building in which you work in. But now we have to think differently about the audiences to not only provide the right messaging behind any programming that happens. And let's say, for instance, we're celebrating Women's History Month as an example, and it's more, tactical, practical sense. The information that goes out to team members has to be in a variety of different paths. It just can't be through email. It has to be through Slack channels, which is more of an instant messenger. It has to be posted on LCD screens in the fulfillment centers. Like, you have to engage people differently in order for them to feel part of the solution and part of the thing that you're trying to drive. The other thing is that we're constantly looking at not just D&I from a programming perspective and a particular, project. Hey, on May today, we're hosting X, Y, and Z in the break room. But really, when you boil it down, like, how does this get integrated into our talent processes? How are we making effective, equitable, good decisions about how we curate our programs? How do we think about learning and development for our executives or individual contributors? How do we think about succession? And what programs or what processes exist that shouldn't exist? Inspect those to make sure that there's no harm that's being done to anyone, because once you lift up one group, obviously that's going to help to impact everybody else. And so we are always thinking about not just the specific of create an inclusive work environment, but it takes us different directions of, whether it's a particular program, whether it's a particular call, but really thinking about how we embed this into the function of human resources from a most practical of the talent. How do we hire? How do we terminate, for that matter? How do we think about, development? We have to make sure that it's embedded in there, because if it is an add-on, then people won't do it. People won't think of it in that way. They won't view it in that way, but it has to be something naturally that comes as just a function of you showing up to work. And I would say lastly, from an inclusive environment, is creating forums where people can talk. So people can, have a forum on a webinar. You can have Zoom calls with your teams. You can do all these things to engage, because people want to talk about their stories. They want to share their experiences. So the more in which you can create that helps to then get out what people need, and then you can respond to the needs.
Nailed it. Of course you did. So you talked a lot about the systems, the processes, the programming piece. I'll say yes, 100%. Adding to that, I think maybe an additional perspective, which I'm sure Chewy is doing as well. But we've really focused on, we've done some of the system and process things, probably not as progressively as you all have, but really getting to the basics of leadership training and empowering our leaders to understand creating a respectful work environment and how you set that tone as a leader. And so we've done training on emotional intelligence. We've done training on the kind of the culture model and equation of the experiences that you are creating as a leader, and how you treat people shapes beliefs that those individuals have about the company culture, about their work environment, about their peers and coworkers and team. And those beliefs drive actions, and those actions create your results as a company. And so we have tried to really focus on building that core leadership competency of leading with integrity, leading around creating an equitable work environment that will drive that feeling of inclusion, because inclusivity is really a sense of belonging, right? Like, you are connected to this team you're a part of, to the company and the values. And so we've really started to try and influence that from a leadership training perspective, and having leaders that are emoting and living the values that we want as a company.
Excellent. All right, so we got about 10 minutes. This is a question for Mike, Quincy, and Herbert. Sarah talked about leadership. So from a leadership perspective, curious, how can someone in a leader role take care of themselves and avoid burnout?
It's a good thing you didn't ask me this.
Can I ask them how to do that? Who wants to go first?
Go ahead.
Our way this way.
It's really hard, and it sounds very cliche, but it is making sure you have time for yourself. I really think it's as simple as that. I think you said something earlier, Herb, that I thought was really powerful, and it touched on this idea of we only have we have 24 hours in a day, and anything you can do, like AI or how you structure your team or how you structure your day, carving out, like one of the little things I will block time in my calendar to read email. It's a little simple thing. Usually people schedule over it anyways, but doing little things like that so you can focus. I think there's three things. One is having, at least in marketing, I think all leadership roles, having time to be thoughtful about doing your work, because I find myself where I'm getting pulled in 7 and I'm not doing my best work. And my team isn't doing their best work when people are doing that to them. So it's making sure you have time to be thoughtful about everything, every single action you're taking. 2 is just mental health, making sure that you have time to take care of yourself and you're doing your best. And then 3 is making sure that you're taking a step back and looking at your job is to see the forest for the trees. So that's the 3 things I would say.
That's definitely a really good start and really good tips. I think just sticking with the theme of time. If you look at your day, your week, your month, or your year in terms of a portfolio, so your portfolio should be diverse, right? So your entire portfolio can't be work, right? So, and then you have sub portfolio. So what I do professionally throughout the day. I block my time. I try to protect my time so I have time to be strategic, time for deep work, time for being collaborative and having meetings. And then there's the time for emails, which again gets scheduled over most of the time. But I also allow myself to balance out the rest of my life as well, so that to the best of my ability I protect the other roles that I occupy in my life. So my role as a father, my role as a husband, my role as a son, as a neighbor, as a friend. Those are things that I protect, and I value that time as well. And so the first thing I would say is, again, diversifying your portfolio in terms of your time and protecting those different sub-portfolios within that. The second thing, Mike hit on this, is the mental health piece cannot be understated, especially in this day and age. So whatever tips, tools you have, for me, it's sometimes it's reading or it's exercising. I wake up every morning at 4:45, and I have 2 hours of time before the chaos in my house begins when everyone else wakes up. And so that's my quiet time, and admittedly, I will take a portion of that dedicated to emails, scheduling emails to be sent out, so I don't have to have that burning in my pocket the rest of the day as something I've got to do. And then I'll read, or I'll meditate, or I'll do something that's completely non-related to what I do professionally. So I think that's important. And I think 3 is just recognizing that none of us have all the answers. None of us are the smartest person in the room, nor should we be. And recognizing that we have, going back to where we started this, we have networks of people that not only are natural supports, but also people that have skills and competencies that we don't have that complement us and we complement them, and really trusting and leaning into the competencies and the capabilities of other people to move the mountain and not feeling like you have to carry the burden yourself by yourself.
Yep, and I would just say that for me personally, my day usually starts at about 5 in the morning. Work out for about 3 hours every morning.
3 hours?
Yes.
Dang.
Yes.
Shamed us.
But to me, that 3 hours, that's my time, because I am giving my time to so many other people during the day, and I try, keyword is try, to make that, my time downstairs in the gym. But for some reason, I end up possibly checking an email or taking a phone call or doing something. But I have learned the function that's been on the iPhone forever called Focus, where you can set to say if somebody calls or emails you or texts you, I'm working out right now, I'll call you back later. I can't say that I've been using that very well, but that time that I have downstairs with me, that's my time. A lot of my business partner, she knows not to call me around that time, or she emails me or texts me. I know it's an emergency, but she knows what I'm doing at that time. And at the end of the day, my grandmother always told me, if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of others. Mm-hmm. So if I'm not physically and mentally well, I can't do my job well. And some days when I don't get to work out and to get that time, my business partner like, you didn't work out today because you're a little crabby. You're real short, you're kind of snappy. So if you us being in our high demand positions, we have to take care of ourselves because there are people who are depending on us. And if we're not our best selves, we can't help anybody else be their best self.
Excellent. So all really good stuff. We got about 3 minutes. So I'm going to have one rapid fire question for you if you can answer it really quick, which will be hard. We could probably spend another 20, 25 minutes on this one. But looking back at your career, what's one piece of advice that you would tell yourself?
It's not rapid fire.
Oof.
Okay, we're going to use all the time thinking of this.
I'll go. I was talking to some folks before this started. I think being curious and asking questions and being willing to raise your hand to take on something that maybe scares you or you don't have all of the experience, but you're curious enough to figure it out has served me beyond well in continuing to get exposure to opportunities that might have been ahead of where my title or my role was within the organization. That curiosity drove, increasing knowledge and expertise and skills that prepared me for next opportunities.
Excellent.
Maybe I'll add to that. I think getting out of your comfort zone more. I think I accidentally did that a few times, and it always was when I had my best moments, whether I enjoyed it or the most came out of my career. So kind of building off of yours, that's what I would say to my younger self.
I would say being comfortable being you. It's you. There's nobody else like you. All the swimmers, it was you who made it. I'm just saying, right?
Yeah.
Like divine order, like you. So being comfortable with being you, which then allows you to walk into spaces with an appreciation of you first as opposed to everybody else and trying to fit in, mold yourself, etc. It's good to have influence, but at the same time, like, I'm me. Nobody else can be me. So I'm going to show up in that way, and people will recognize that.
Quincy, you want to go or you want me to go?
You can go.
Sure. I think I would have, I think the advice I would give my younger self in my career would be to have the courage, I think, to better embrace failure. and be vulnerable in the sense that I don't have to, or I didn't have to feel like I had to do everything, or I had to be perfect, or I had to, work whatever 100 hours a week to get to move mountains. To be okay embracing the fact that you can try and fail and learn from that and move forward, and that admitting failure is not necessarily a sign of weakness, but a sign of strength.
I have two conversations I will have with the younger Quincy. The first one is more serious because I was a shy person growing up and even coming here at Elmhurst. I would tell Quincy to get out of your comfort zone and ask more questions. And then the last one, I would tell young Quincy to run the play and do not try and go to the basket, because I played basketball here, and that's when I tore my ACL. Ooh. So had I ran the play, I would have probably still had a complete ACL. So run the play.
Excellent. All right, we're at time. So I want to thank all the panelists. Terrific conversation. Very diverse backgrounds, experiences, and I think what you shared today is very beneficial for the folks in the room and then online as well. So a really pleasure meeting you, and thank you for your participation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you.